Взлетает красная ракета, бьет пулемет неутомим, и значит, нам нужна одна победа. Одна на всех мы за ценой не постоим, одна на всех мы за ценой не постоим. Нас ждет огонь смертельный, и все ж бессилием нам сомнения прочь уходят в ночь отдельный. 10-й наш десантный батальон, 10-й наш десантный батальон.
Women of the Red Army and those who served at Stalingrad.
Клубились яростно метели по Сталинградской по земле, дымились потные шинели.
In Stalingrad, as on every other front of the Soviet-German war, Red Army women played a very significant part. Far from contending to act as mere assistants or auxiliaries, as in other armies and in the Wehrmacht, Soviet women performed the exact same functions as men. In other armies, such situations were exceptional, whereas in the Red Army, it was the norm. Let's have a look at the role of Soviet women during the war, and let's review the most famous of them. And then focus on those who fought at Stalingrad or contributed in their own way to the battle on the Volga. We'll also share some interviews from women veterans. In her masterly book, The Unwomanly Face of War, Svetlana Alexeievich writes that women's war is more terrible than men's. Men hide behind history, behind facts. War fascinates them as action and a conflict of ideas, of interests, whereas women are caught up with the feelings. And another thing, men are prepared from childhood for the fact that they may have to shoot. Women are not taught that. They are not prepared to do that work. And they remember other things, and remember differently. They are capable of seeing what is closed to men. Alexeievich's book, gathering over 500 interviews with women veterans, is a powerful and deeply moving document. She wanted to write something that would disgust the reader from the very idea of war, and she fulfilled her mission. Anyone who reads her book will definitely and immensely hate war. This is also one of the objectives of this channel, to make people understand that war is not glamorous, war is ugly, war is folly, war is the most terrible thing people can do to themselves. And just as it was for men, the outcome was tragic for the vast majority of women in this war. Chapter 1. Women in the Red Army. Soviet women had pretty much the same role as men on the front line. Medics, of course, but also pilots, snipers, gunners, signallers, scouts, drivers, sappers, staff and communications officers, reporters, even tank crews, or simply infantry, and they actively participated in partisan operations. They eagerly volunteered and enlisted. At the beginning of the war, thousands of women volunteers were turned away. They were eventually accepted later after the horrendous losses in the wake of the German invasion. But, no matter whether officially drafted or not, the fact is that Soviet women distinguished themselves from the very beginning, from the first day and from the very first hours of the war. On June 22, 1941, General Fedyuninsky was commander of the 15th Infantry Corps of the Kiev Special Military District. His HQ was located in the West Ukrainian town of Kovel, not far from the border. After the German attack broke out, Fedyuninsky's units joined the border troops, fighting off the onslaught. He recalls, "We reached the defensive positions where the border guards had for several hours already been waging an unequal struggle. Even the wives of the guards were in the firing line, carrying water and ammunition and taking care of the wounded. Some of the women were also firing at the advancing Germans. That's what awaited the invaders of the Soviet Union, a total war from the beginning, where men and women were equally committed against them. From 600,000 to 1 million Soviet women, 80,000 of whom were officers, fought at one time or another at the front from 1941 to 1945. Women soldiers were often highly efficient and most respected by the men they served along with. As a matter of fact, they were often braver than men in the many difficult situations. A significant number of them were awarded the highest possible distinction, Hero of the Soviet Union. And of course, in the rear women took upon themselves many traditionally male specialities. As men went to war, someone had to work in the factories, maintain the machine tools, stand behind the wheel of a tractor, become a railway attendant, or learn the profession of metallurgist. Of the 1 million women who served in the Red Army during the war, a staggering figure, it is only logical that in such conditions romances and flirting developed at the front. According to countless accounts by veterans, there were quite a few so-called frontline wives, commonly referred to as PPG, Pochodna Polevaya Zhena, a parody of the famous PPSH, Pistolet Pulemyot Shpagina, better known to us as the PPSH submachine gun. These women were generally serving with higher-ranking officers. According to others, this situation was even systemic. A female joining a standard unit was immediately courted, if not harassed, by all the males around her. But the specificity of the Red Army was that it included purely female units. And let's face it, anyway, every single idyll or relationship was doomed to be short. In this war, nothing lasted long. As always, the historian needs to be cautious not to translate a popular idea into fact. Regardless of their situation, whether they remained single or not, most of the women that went to war did so in order to deal with war first, and they did it really well. Let's focus on a few emblematic women, serving as pilots, tankers and snipers. But let us also remember that among all the women in the Red Army, among the ranks of the field nurses were found most of the heroines. Countless of them selflessly helped wounded men at the height of the fighting, dragging them out of the battlefield despite them weighing 2 or 3 times their own weight, bandaging them under fiercest fire, crawling in and out of no man's land, again and again, relentlessly. They were highly respected by their male colleagues at all levels of the chain of command for their incredible bravery. May their feat be forever remembered. Women tankers. Maria Oktyabskaya became the first woman tanker in the Red Army. After her husband was killed fighting in 1941, Maria asked to be sent to the front to avenge him, but her request was declined due to her age, 36, and a past illness. She then decided to find another way. She sold all of her possessions and donated 50,000 rubles for the war effort to buy a tank and requested to be allowed to drive it. She sent the following letter to Stalin. To the Chairman of the State Defense Committee, Supreme Commander-in-Chief. Dear Yosef Vissarionovich, my husband, Regimental Commissar Ilya Fedorovich Oktyabsky, perished in the battle for the motherland. For him and for all Soviet people tortured by the fascist barbarians, I want to take revenge on the fascist dogs, for which I contributed all my personal savings to the State Bank to build a tank. Please name the tank Fighting Friend and send me to the front as its driver. I have this specialty. I have excellent capabilities with a machine gun, and I am a sharpshooter. I send you warm greetings and wish you good health for many, many years, to the fear of enemies and the glory of our motherland. Maria Vasilievna Oktyabskaya. Stalin replied like this. To Comrade Maria Vasilievna Oktyabskaya. Thank you, Maria Vasilievna, for your concern for the armoured forces of the Red Army. Your wish will be granted. Please accept my best wishes. Stalin. Maria received and drove a T-34 medium tank named Fighting Friend as she wished. She proved her ability as a tank driver and her bravery in fighting. After she perished in 1944, she was made a hero of the Soviet Union. She was the first of only 2 female tank drivers to be awarded this title. Alexandra and Ivan Boyko, a married couple, did the same as Maria Oktyabrskaya. In 1942, they contributed 50,000 rubles from their savings to the Defence Fund in order to build a tank for the Red Army, and sent a letter to Stalin requesting they be allowed to fight on the tank built with their own money. They received the same laconic but favourable reply as Maria Oktyabrskaya when she wrote to the Supreme Leader. "Thank you, Ivan Fyodorovich and Alexandria Leontievna, for taking care of the Red Army. Your wish will be granted. Please accept my best wishes, Stalin." The Boykos then graduated from the Chelyabinsk Tank School and were enrolled in the reserve. They continued writing letters requesting to be sent to the front as soon as possible. Finally, in May 1944, the Boykos were sent to the 48th Guards Heavy Tank Regiment and received a personal heavy tank, JS-2. Alexandra was assigned tank commander and Ivan its driver. On July 25th, they destroyed a Tiger tank and cut the railway leading to Riga, thus creating conditions for the storming of the city. On August the 6th, a report from the Soviet Information Bureau reported, "In 2 weeks the tank crew of Junior Lieutenants Alexandra and Ivan Boyko destroyed 5 enemy tanks and 2 guns. In one of the battles the crew was wounded and the damaged tank was sent to another unit." In September, Alexandra Boyko spoke at the anti-fascist rally in Moscow, to which attended Field Marshal Paulus and his fellow colleagues from the League of German Officers. Her portrait was published on the cover of the Ogonyok magazine. Alexandra Samusenka was the only female tanker in the 1st Guards Tank Army and the only woman deputy commander of a tank battalion. She received the Order of the Red Star when her tank crew defeated 3 Tiger tanks. U.S. Army Sergeant Joseph Beryl, who had just escaped from a German Stalag camp, encountered Alexandra's tank brigade in January 1945 as it entered East Prussia. He persuaded her to allow him to fight alongside the Soviet unit on its way to Berlin, thus being one of only 2 American citizens to have fought in the Red Army. Beryl's expertise was appreciated by his new Soviet colleagues, whose battalion was also equipped with Lend-Lease M4 Sherman tanks. And in turn the American, who learned that Alexandra had lost her entire family during the war and that she herself perished 1 month after their meeting, cited her as a symbol of the fortitude and courage displayed by the Soviet people. Alexandra Rashubkina wanted to join the army, but her requests were rejected. So she cut her hair short, dressed in men's clothes, edited her documents, and was eventually drafted into the army as Alexander Rashubkin. She graduated near Stalingrad as a tank driver and mechanic. Alexandra then fought in Chuikov's 62nd Army at Stalingrad and all the way from there to Poland. For almost 3 years, neither the crew of the T-34 on which Rashubkina fought, nor the other fellow soldiers suspected that a woman was hiding under the guise of Sashka. She recalls, "I cut my hair like a man, my figure was always boyish, my hips were narrow, my shoulders were wide, almost no breasts. And it was not often necessary to undress at the front, except to wash. But I tried to solve this issue separately from everyone, referring to shyness. The men laughed. You, Sashka, are just like a girl." Women snipers. The Soviet Union deployed about 2,500 female snipers, of whom about 500 survived the war. Their combined kill claims is over 10,000. The most famous included Lyudmila Pavlichenko and Rosa Shanina. Lyudmila Pavlichenko fought as a sniper during the siege of Odessa, where she recorded 187 kills. Injured during the siege of Sevastopol, she was evacuated and after recovering became a propagandist for the Red Army. She trained other snipers and her total of confirmed kills was 309, including 36 enemy aces. In 1942, Lyudmila was sent to the United States and Canada as part of the USSR's attempts to convince the Allies to open a second front in Europe. She became the first Soviet citizen to be received by a US president as Roosevelt welcomed her to the White House. She was later invited by the First Lady to tour the US, relating her experiences as a female soldier on the front lines. During this tour, Lyudmila was not taken seriously by the press and was referred to as the girl sniper. When meeting with reporters in Washington, D.C., she was dumbfounded by the kinds of questions put to her. She said one reporter even criticized the length of the skirt of my uniform, saying that in America women wear shorter skirts, and besides my uniform made me look fat. They even asked her if she used makeup on the front line. She was described by the reporters as very blunt and unemotional in her responses. In Chicago, she stood before large crowds, chiding the men to support a second front. "Gentlemen," she said, "I am 25 years old and I have killed 309 fascist invaders so far. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" Her words settled on the crowd, then caused a surging roar of support. Rosa Shanina, having lost her brothers in the war, decided to enlist and train as a sniper. She began her career in 1944 at the age of 20 and proved at once a remarkable shooter for which she was decorated. When Operation Bagration began on the 22nd of June, it was decided that female snipers would be withdrawn. But despite the Soviet policy of sparing snipers, Rosa asked to be sent to the front line, and even as her request was refused, she went anyway. She was killed in East Prussia in early 1945. Her total kill score was 59. War correspondent Pyotr Molchanov, who had frequently met Rosa Shanina at the front, described her as a person of unusual will, with a genuine bright nature. Women pilots. Marina Rashkova was the first woman in the USSR to achieve the diploma of a professional air navigator. She broke many flight records and contributed to the development of the Red Air Force. As the war began, and after receiving Stalin's authorization, she founded the first 3 female Air Force regiments, which became legendary and produced dozens of heroes of the Soviet Union. These were the 586th Fighter Aviation Regiment, equipped with the new Yak-1 fighters, to which initially belonged Lydia Litviak; the 587th Bomber Aviation Regiment, equipped with the very best of the Soviet bombers, the Petlyakov PE-2. After Marina Rashkova perished in 1943, the unit took her name and became the 125th Guards Night Bomber Aviation Regiment. The 588th Night Bomber Aviation Regiment. The 588th Night Bomber Aviation Regiment, equipped with Polikarpov PO-2s, a very outdated biplane. This was the only regiment to remain solely female throughout the war. These were the famous Night Witches. After the Battle of Stalingrad, it became the 46th Guards Night Bomber Aviation Regiment.
И коль придется в землю лечь, так это только раз. Но пусть и смерть в огне в дыму бойца не устрашит. И что положено тому, пусть каждый совершит. Так что ж, друзья, война вперед, да будет каждый прав. Пусть наше сердце не замрет, не подрожит рука. Настал черед, пришла пора, идем, друзья, вперед. За все, чем жили мы вчера, за все, что завтра ждем. С берез неслышен, невесом слетает желтый лист. Старинный вальс, осенний сон играет гармонист.
походах наших, о боях с врагами долго будут люди песни распевать, и в кругу с друзьями часто вечерами эти дни когда-нибудь мы будем вспоминать. Об огнях пожарищах, о друзьях, товарищах. Где-нибудь, когда-нибудь мы будем говорить. Вспомню я пехоту и родную роту, и тебя за то, что ты дал мне закурить. Давай закурим, товарищ, по одной, давай закурим, товарищ мой. А когда не будет фашистов и в помине, и к своему любимым мы придем опять, вспомним, как на запад шли по Украине. Эти дни когда-нибудь мы будем вспоминать.
Не думай о секундах свысока. Наступит время, сам поймешь, наверное. Свистят они, как пули у виска. Мгновение, мгновение, мгновение. Мгновение спрессованы в года. Мгновения спрессованы в столетия. И я не понимаю иногда, где первое мгновение, где последнее. У каждого мгновения свой резон, свои колокола, своя отметина.
The story of Lydia Litviak, the fighter race known as the White Lily of Stalingrad, is told in full in a dedicated chapter. Yekaterina Bodonova was the friend of Lydia Litviak and the second of the world's two female fighter races. Vladimir Lavrinenkov, a Soviet ace in the elite 9th Guards Fighter Regiment, to which belonged the two women, characterized Yekaterina Bodonova as a cheerful, lively character, whilst Lydia Litviak looked thoughtful and quiet. Natalia Meklin was perhaps the most powerful of the night witches. By the end of the war, she had flown almost 1,000 night missions. In 1945, the Gold Star Medal Hero of the Soviet Union was presented to her by Marshal Rokossovsky himself. There were many other excellent women pilots.